seeing people I hadn't seen in a year, right?
Yeah.
And I think the number of people who came up to me like, "Oh my God, you look good." It was great. So
That's such a good
uh,
feeling.
it really is. It
I
really is.
love that. In this video, I interview my client David. Now, David is a special individual because he is 23 years old. He is the youngest member of our program. Just the way that he thinks and moves and acts, you'll see in this video, he's very, very mature for his age. He's seen some absolutely insane results. I mean, the muscle growth that he's had in 5 months, like just absolutely legendary, and his consistency. The most important part though that I really want you to pay attention to in this video is his mindset, because he has a bulletproof mindset. There have been so many setbacks that have come up along his journey, and yet he has consistently been able to get back up. Because the reality is, success isn't defined by how often you fall off the wagon, it's defined by how quickly you get back on, and David is an amazing example of that. So without further ado, let's jump into the interview. Welcome in, David. Really excited to have you here for this interview. Thanks for sitting down with me today to kind of go through your journey. So, can we just start off with a quick introduction, who you are, where you live, what you do for work, what your kind of lifestyle is like?
Sure. So my name is David Wolfbender. I'm originally from the DC area, but I live in Indianapolis now. So you want to talk about a shift going from DC life to Indianapolis? It's a big one. But no, I work as a consultant in the aviation industry. So we do operations and logistics consulting. Um, when I am active on a client engagement, I'm usually on the road for about probably 90% of the time. So I do a lot of travel. And yeah, I when I'm not traveling, I work remotely. So it kind of goes back and forth between a lot of travel and a lot of nothing in terms of travel. So that's kind of what my lifestyle looks like.
Yeah, yeah, pretty hectic. Lots long days for sure. Yeah, with that schedule and like since we've been working together, what are the results that you've gotten?
Yeah, I think, so when I came into the program, just kind of give some like history or some context, I came in having already kind of had a workout plan, right? So I had been lifting for probably 3 or 4 months, and I was staying pretty regular. I was pretty, I think, I had a good plan, and I think I was doing a good job on the fitness side, but I knew nothing about nutrition, nothing at all. And I think one of the things that kind of got me in the program was, how can we go from a here to an up here, right? In terms of fitness, and then how can we go from a zero to something on nutrition?
Mhm.
And so, you know, where did it get me? I think, I started a position where, um, you know, relative to where I was a year before that, I think when I started, I still kind of liked where I was, but I didn't see any, I think I was just like maintaining, right? Like I didn't see any kind of, growth, and I didn't see a goal right in mind.
Yeah.
So the thing that Zach's program did for me was I I really think I started honing in on the things I didn't know about, and I started seeing dramatic impacts. I started growing muscle, I think, much quicker, or building muscle much quicker. Started seeing results that I was really happy with, and then also I think the general community being able to get answers, whether it be from Zach or someone else in the program, on things that other people are dealing with, is dramatic, right? I think one of the things that I really liked about this program was it takes into account the realities of life, right? You can find all these kind of workout plans online, and um, you can, there are workout plans, there are fitness plans, there are nutrition plans, but most of them don't really actually consider how people live, right? And that there are just certain realities of where we are as a society and where we all are personally that like we have to take into account, right?
Yeah.
And I think the program having that kind of custom element was what really helped me see my results as I was kind of going through it. So.
Mm. Yeah, that makes sense. How were you able to like, with everything that was going on, what was kind of your mindset that allowed you to have such phenomenal consistency? Because for the people watching, David is insanely consistent. Like that's why he's gotten such amazing results. So what was it like? What was going through your mind? How are you able to stay so consistent with such a busy, hectic lifestyle?
Yeah, that's a good question. And one of the things with this, I was a soccer player in high school, right? And so my life in terms of fitness and nutrition was just handed to me, right? Like, I didn't really have much of a leeway or of a choice. I kind of had a pretty dedicated kind of schedule, if you will, right?
Yeah.
And when I got to college, that changed, right? Because I was injured. I didn't play college soccer due to injury, and I think some of the consistency came from that, right? That, I was used to like kind of a schedule. But what it really came down to was what I was starting to prioritize was feeling better every day and
Mm,
being better every day, right? And I was the first one to say, I mean, in our launch call, I said to Zach, I care a lot less about how I look than how I feel, right? And it just so happened that going through this, I also really liked how I looked, right? But I'll tell you, I felt much better going through the day. So the reason why I started working out in the mornings was because after the workout, I felt better, right? And I think both personally, in terms of how that helped develop, like actually just how I was feeling, and then professionally in terms of like how I was actually doing my job, right? Because we do better work when we feel better. So for me, it was the consistency was just built into the idea that like, I want to feel good today. And one of the things that's kind of funny is when when you can force your body to adjust to a new reality. And when I say new reality, it's kind of funny. I shifted like a few things, right? Like this is not like I don't think I've overly changed my, what I mean? Like I haven't
yeah.
gone through this
It wasn't like a
rapid,
180.
yeah, this is not a 180. This was like, maneuvering a few things, switching out a few ingredients for something else,
Yep.
finding other foods I liked, um, finding foods I liked at the same restaurants I already liked, right? The when I started, where was I going with that? Oh, right. When you can train your body on that kind of new reality, the old reality, your body just does not react the same way to it as you once did.
Mm,
And like I tell this story like about a month ago now. I was just having a bad day, and I woke up in the morning. I'm like, you know what I want right now? I'm in the Midwest. I really want Culver's, right? Which
yeah.
and the thing to understand about Culver's is there are so few items on the menu that are good for you, right? Um, and so I decided, like, I'm going to go back. I'm going to get my order, right? And I did it. And I threw out of my mind all the nutrition things that I know now, and I did it. But what was interesting is after I ate it, whereas 8 months ago I would have said, "Oh, that was so good." This time I said, "You know what? That was pretty underwhelming." And also it wasn't satisfying anymore.
Mm,
And when you can train your body, it doesn't actually take that long. Like I said, 8 months, it didn't take that long. When you can train your body to that new kind of reality, things just change, right?
mm,
And now when I find myself breaking my nutrition goals, it's usually because there's something new that I wasn't like used to yet. Like, when I go traveling, if there's like a new dish I'm told you have to try, right? Um, but those things are pretty few and far between.
yeah.
And training your body to make that kind of transition, first of all, way easier than I ever thought it would be. And second of all, transformative, just transformative in how you live your life and how you feel on a daily basis. So yeah,
Yeah.
huge, huge difference there.
I'm curious. I'd love to dive into just kind of like energy levels because I recall when we first started working together, you're just like, I just like don't feel good, right? I don't feel that great. Like, what did you notice changed in your body when you started to make changes in nutrition?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it was a combination of it's something at the nexus of supplements, nutrition, and fitness, right? Part of it is that the way I handle my workout routine and my nutrition routine is that I find myself really accustomed to the idea of routine and process, and that when you break apart of the process over time, your body starts to have like a visceral reaction to the idea of breaking the process, right? So every morning I wake up, I do my pre-workout. Every morning after I wake up and I do my pre-workout, I go right to the gym, right? And when I come back from the gym, I'm drinking my protein shake. Um, and that kind of process, I think, is really healthy for the brain, like in terms of how we think about our daily lives.
Mm,
But in terms of energy, there are a few things. First of all, um, working out and nutrition can help regulate your schedules better, right? And I think we don't give enough credence to the idea that like energy is in some ways a manifestation of how we feel in any given moment, right? And also like energy, if you regulate your schedule more and you're like, okay, I'm going to go to bed at this time and wake up at this time, um, somewhat regularly, your body starts growing accustomed to that, and that plays a pretty notable role in energy. So I think that's a pretty big part of it. Um, the other thing, just in terms of energy and kind of like nutrition, is a lot of people don't understand the way the body consumes food. And I certainly didn't. Like, you can throw me into that camp of someone who knew nothing about nutrition, nothing about the makeup of food. I knew what a calorie was, but I actually knew more about the science of how a calorie was burned than I did about what a calorie actually meant, right? And um, for me, I think that, like, when I realized, like, if I drink this protein shake in the morning, I cannot eat for 4 hours because I just won't be hungry, right? And that fuels your body for like the first 4 hours of the day. We were talking not long ago about how, I wake up in the mornings and after my workouts, and I work from home sometimes. If I work out at home, there are some days where I am so energized after the workout ends that, like, I want to get right to work. Like, I don't want to do anything other than go, 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 go for 4 hours straight. You know what I mean? And part of that's because this process, whether it be the caffeine in the morning to to the creatine to the protein shake, all of that together just fuels you, right? And think about the impact. If I were talking to someone who wasn't doing this, I would say, like, think about the impact I can have professionally, right? Um, no one wants to admit, but a big part of professional, like, being seen as professional is how you look, right? And also a big part of being a professional in this world is how can you work? And I mean, if you're able to sprint through, right,
Yeah.
then it makes a big difference, I think. So I started doing better work. And that was a big deal for me. So yeah, that I don't know if that answered your question, but it threw
That's
something there.
No, that's such a good, yeah, that's such a good point, especially like what you said about being a professional and like how you present yourself, how you show up, the type of work that you do. Um, I'm curious too with like being able to actually maintain and build routine with a life that frankly doesn't have routine, right? Like your life is pretty crazy. I mean, what, you're traveling every other week, like you'll have, I mean, you were just at what, a conference this past weekend, right? So
Yeah.
like how do you build routine when your life doesn't have routine?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Part of it is that I think about outcome, right? And so it's really easy to say, oh, I've got to be up at 7:30 for that session at this conference. So
Yeah.
I'm not going to work out tomorrow, right? But what we really need to be thinking about is, how do I want to show up to that 7:30 session, right? Because there's nothing, the only thing worse than being in a 7:30 session is being in a 7:30 session tired, right? And so the the knowledge and the maturity to be able to say that if I wake up an hour earlier and do my workout routine, uh, even though it sounds bad, even though when I wake up for that first moment, I'm going to dread life, right?
Yeah.
Um, if I'm willing to put in the perseverance, if I'm willing to have the perseverance to get through that first 10-minute block, getting out of the bed, you know, starting my routine and
Yeah.
starting the workout, I will thank myself for it at 7:30. And so no matter when my day starts, no matter what my routine looks like, I'm very intentional about building that in because I know my future self is going to thank me. And when I hate when people say that because they're always like, you're going to like how you look in a couple days. And I'm not even talking about how I look, right? I'm talking about how I
Yeah.
feel,
Yeah.
right? And I used to tell this joke that every single day, there were two reactions I would have every morning. One of which was I would wake up and I would not want to work out because I was really tired and I want to go back to bed for another hour and a half, right?
Yeah.
And my other one was that when I was able to get up and start my workout, I'd be really, really hungry. And I would always tell myself that I was going to go get food after the workout. It has not happened once. um, because after the workout, you feel energized. And after I do my protein shake, I don't want to eat. And you can go from craving, your favorite food very quickly to knowing that if you were to eat it, you would throw it out. Right. And that kind of build of routine can first of all very healthy for the brain just psychologically, but also just propels you to new heights, right? And so that's kind of how I built that routine of, like, just being intentional about how do I want to show up to this, and where's my head going to be in 2 hours? Where do I want it to be in 2 hours? Okay, how am I going to start this process? The first 10
Yeah.
minutes is the most important, right?
Yeah.
So it's a starting problem.
That so many good things there. Like, yeah, doing things for your future self, just the way you're thinking ahead, such powerful mindset stuff there. So that's really cool to see. What do your colleagues think of all this?
I have colleagues that ask me about the workout routine. I think people think it's harder than it is, to be entirely honest with you. It's not easy, right? I mean, it takes discipline, it takes consistency. I think first of all, people are worried they don't know what to do, and I'm completely with you on that. I didn't know what to do, right? It's the whole point of fitness coaching, right? um, when you learn what you need to be doing, like thing, you feel more confident. And also having someone there who can tell you when you're wrong, when you're
Yeah.
right and wrong, is a really helpful, stepping stone to getting this done. Um, I don't think that people viewed me as strictly overweight before I started this program. I think it was just, I was just kind of an average guy. Um, People definitely, I think, saw physical differences. And what's interesting is there was a lot of surprise because a lot of the places I eat stayed somewhat the same, right? There are a couple places that I just cut out, right? But those are the ones that were like really bad. Most places, like I still eat at Chipotle usually
Yep.
2 or 3 times a week.
Yep.
Um, and I am still at Chick-fil-A pretty frequently. Um, you know, I'm still eating a bunch of bagels, right? Like things haven't changed as dramatically as I think people thought they would, or think they have to. Now, I mean, people start at different places, right? But I mean, for example, the ability to cut out food at breakfast because of the protein shake. People think that's a dramatic shift. It's not. Um, when you say to someone, cut out breakfast, that's a dramatic shift.
Yeah.
When you say, cut out what you're eating down to the shake, and I guarantee you'll be satiated, um, it changes things,
You're just
right?
replacing it rather than
Right.
cutting it out.
And what's amazing is you're doing more with less, right? I mean, the calories in the protein shakes, like I think I do two scoops, like 240 calories, something like that. I don't, whatever it is, it's pretty low. But it's 96% of the daily recommended input for protein, right? And of course, our protein, my protein metric is a little bit higher, pretty dramatically higher than that. But the that just shows you it's about what you're eating, right? Like that macro really matters.
Yep.
And so that shift starts as a big thing, right? Like first couple weeks, but once you get into that routine, it's nothing.
Yep.
And by the way, for those who are worried about the cost of it, the protein cheaper than nearly any breakfast you can find. Uh,
Yeah.
it is it is a magical tool that has been invented
Yeah.
by man to bring us to where we are.
Yeah.
And we might as well take advantage of it, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean that's a big part of it. Um, what else did I want to say? I think that might have been. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah. What have you learned about like the importance of macronutrients versus when you first came in at the beginning of the program?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of foods I were eating were higher in fat content than I realized. It's easy to think I'm eating chicken and therefore I'm eating protein, right? Things are way more complicated than that. So I learned a lot about that.
Yeah.
The other thing I learned is that you can find foods that you really do like. Yeah, I'm a huge lover of fruit. There's certain vegetables I really, really like even before the program,
Yeah.
before I got into this, right? But I didn't realize, I can eat for some of them almost genuinely, not really, but I can have as much of it as I want and not have any problems,
Yeah.
right? And even shifting certain things, like, like I've always enjoyed yogurt, right? Shifting from the yogurt I was eating down to Chobani, uh, no fat yogurt honestly tastes very similar. I can put stuff into the Chobani, like blueberries or high protein granola. Virtually way better macros, right? But and it definitely keeps you just as satiated, if not more.
Yeah.
And so I don't think people realize, like, there are certain diets that I've seen out there, or certain programs, or whatever you want to call them, that are dramatic shifts in how you live your life,
Mm.
right? And I certainly would not have been a candidate for any of those because I didn't want to change my life dramatically, right?
Yeah.
A bunch of small shifts can be huge in the aggregate, right? And so finding the little shifts where you don't notice that, like, oh, I'm not eating this anymore, um, are huge. For me, it was yogurt. It was, instead of having what did I snack on, right? Like, and like, what was I intaking? And I think people don't think through that as much, and I understand why, right? We live in a society that doesn't really teach people about this kind of stuff. But once you learn and you really find what you like, things just change immediately, right? And the other thing I think that people don't understand is, as you lose weight and as you gain muscle, the rules of the game change a little bit, right? In terms of, you can have a little bit more freedom.
What do you mean
Not
by that?
well, it's like not to eat anything you want, right? But as your body is burning more calories because your metabolism is up, right?
Yep.
You can you can eat a little more, right? I mean, I think that and so people think, I have to get rid of something forever. And in some cases that might be true, but it's not been my experience.
Yeah. So you were eating what, 26, 2,700 calories every day?
Yeah, I mean, right now I'm trying to lose,
Now you're doing a bit of
last
a
couple
cut for
pounds. So
summer, but
I'm in a little bit of a deficit. Uh, Particularly when you consider, you know, the daily active calorie things. But yeah, I mean, when I was not trying to do that, when I was just building muscle, or at least maintaining weight but building muscle, I was like 26, 2,700 calories.
yeah, a
And
lot of food.
yeah, and frankly, I mean, we could go back and look. It's not easy to get there.
Yeah,
Someone who does eat
literally.
a lot, right? And so particularly when you're eating things that are high protein, right?
Yeah.
When you make that shift, like for example, like one of the first thing I did was, one of the first suggestions was, go from fried nuggets to grilled nuggets at Chick-fil-A. And I was pretty bad at that. But what I was surprisingly good at was going from fries to the fruit cup
Mhm.
side, right? Because the fruit cup had virtually nothing in it.
Yeah,
But I really like fruit, right? And interestingly, don't get me wrong, the grilled chicken is 100% better in every way than the fried chicken in terms of nutrition.
yeah,
Uh, but one of the things I came to realize was, if I'm able to make that small shift over here, right, which is taking up just an enormous number of calories in my meal, right, then I might be able to keep this. It just I may not be
yeah.
as satiated because it's not as high protein. Like, so I mean, yeah,
Right.
you can make these compromises with yourself, right,
Yeah,
in this grand game. Um, you know, and the other thing I would tell someone is like, look, you don't have to be perfect all the time, right? This is a game in the aggregate, right? And um, I had many amazing days and I had a few really bad ones, right? And being honest with yourself, taking that kind of accountability, also understanding like the context of your life, right? There was a point where I was working 80-hour weeks for about 6 weeks in a row. I was working in Los Angeles. Um, the I was unable to leave the client site for long enough to
yeah,
get food, right? So the
yeah,
only option was to order, Uber Eats or DoorDash.
yeah,
And this is problematic because most of the places on those apps are not healthy food places, right? There are a few, but they're very far and few between. And so how do you manage that? And the answer is you change what you're eating, right? And I was able to get pretty significant muscle gains and maintain my weight through seriously 6 weeks of Chipotle, Chick-fil-A, Sweet Green was in there, and there were a few others, right? But like, I mean, you say that to someone and they're like, no way, right? And look, I get it, right? Like, I'd have that reaction too, but like, seriously, like, those small shifts, huge deal in the aggregate, particularly when you're doing it over such a long time,
yeah.
right? And I gotta tell you, I loved what I ate, right? Like it just and so it's like I didn't even notice after we got to the sixth week. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's just amazing how that works.
Yeah, I remember that time. It was wild. I remember even I was in LA for like one of those weekends and we were gonna meet up and then David was just so swamped. We
Yeah.
gotta rain check that lift
Yeah.
together at some point. But yeah, that was wild. And I'm really proud of you for being able to like make something of the situation, you know?
Mhm.
Because that's brutal. 6 weeks of 80 hours, right? I feel like most people would just be like, to heck with it. I can't do anything, right? But what do you think when you mentioned like you've been very consistent across the board, but there have definitely been challenges that like knocked you off track. So how did you get back on? Because a lot of people I notice struggle with that. They'll like build some momentum, get some routine going, and then something comes up that just throws them off, and then they just are on a gradual decline where they just get off, right? So how were you able to like get back on track with those different challenges?
Yeah, I think I would do like a reset in a way. I would say to myself, look, um, you know, 2 days there or 2 or 3 days, it wasn't what I was hoping for. Um, today's Monday. Let's get to Wednesday, right? And then on Wednesday, let's get to Friday. Um, and that strategy, I mean, seriously, like the small wins along the way. Um, I don't strictly recommend this. There were days where I just stopped logging, right? And because I was so frustrated with myself, right? but it takes what you got to be able to do is you got to wake up one morning and say, okay, today this is my plan, right? And planning ahead, by the way, is a
Mm.
big when you can do it. It's not always possible, but when you can plan ahead,
Yeah.
um, that's really good psychologically. It's also really good mentally, and it's also really good for your nutrition. So like what I would do is, okay, I'm gonna leave. I know I'm leaving for a trip on Monday. Today's Saturday. I haven't been, these last couple of days have been really bad. Here's what I'm going to do when I wake up on Monday. I'm waking up at 7 a.m. I'm going to, do a little bit of an abridged workout because I got to get on a plane, right? I'm going to do my protein shake. I'm going to get to the airport. I'm going to get on the plane. My connection's in Dallas. I'm going to look on my phone to say, okay, this is the place that I want to go to when I land in Dallas because I know I've seen their menu. I know that there's a grilled chicken option, grilled chicken salad that's really good, that's going to fit within my macros for the day. I know I have this client dinner tonight, so I'm going to be very intentional at lunch to say, it's going to be a lighter lunch because I know I'm probably going to be having a drink at dinner with a client. The client might be ordering something that goes outside of my goal. So it's that kind of planning and discipline to be able to say, look, this is the plan, right? And I think that people need to understand that um, perfect really is the enemy of the good in a certain way. Like we cannot be perfect, right? In the middle of this trip, or excuse me, in the middle of this program, I was in Spain for 10 days, Spain and Morocco for 10 days.
Yeah.
And let me just tell you, I don't know how the Spanish say physically fit with
I
all
know,
horrible food
right?
that is delicious, but horribly
Yeah.
nutritious food that is in their country. Um, but being able to say like, you know what, like yeah, I'm going to try this food right now. Here's what I'm going to be doing to try and counteract that. Like this is
Right.
what I'm going to skip, right?
Right.
Or this is how I'm going to work around that.
Yeah.
Um, Planning can be a pretty major factor, and being able to have the um the humility to say like, look, like I am not going to be perfect, right? And like there are going to be days that I screw up. But like tomorrow doesn't have to be that way, right? Because but there are very few circumstances where you're not in control of it, right? There are days where things just, aren't set up for you, right? And
Yeah.
it's really, really hard. But there are a lot of things that are in our control, right? And so trying to funnel the things that are in our control and make that work, we should do it, right? And so that's how I would do it. I'd be like, let's get to Wednesday. On Wednesday, let's get to Friday. Friday, okay, let's have a good weekend,
Yeah.
right? And stay on that. In terms of the gym, um, I am if there were an organization out there that advocated for caffeine addiction, I'd be a part of it. Um, we have a societal stigma, I think, against caffeine. Here's my opinion. It's not the caffeine addiction that kills us. It's what we do with the caffeine addiction that kills us,
Mm.
right? If we are using caffeine to get ourselves up every day and go work out, in my opinion, that's a net good
It's true.
for us,
Yeah.
right? If we are using caffeine to drink more caffeine, that may not be good, right?
Right.
There's a lot of stuff in soda, for example, that's not good for you.
Yeah.
Um, so
And you think about sleep cycles too, right? With caffeine.
yes,
Like if you're having it first thing in the morning, it's already going to be out of your system by the time you go to bed, versus if you're having it late in the afternoon, that's going to start messing with your quality of sleep. So it's a big part.
it does regulate your schedule pretty significantly,
Yeah.
in more ways than I care to explain. So I think it does have bodily effects that are positive, right? Like, it sets a routine. I will tell you, like, at this conference, I ran out of protein powder one day and I didn't really even notice the day before, so I didn't have time to go out and get any because it was too late at night. Um, like, yeah, the next morning, like, I felt off, right?
Mm.
Because
Yeah.
like, what do I do?
Your body's so
Like,
used to it. Yeah.
I mean, I've done this every single day. And so and I'll tell you, if you drink the protein powder after the protein powder becomes caffeine in terms of how your brain thinks about it, right? Because you do
Oh,
it together.
true. Yeah. You're
Um,
linking them together.
and the working out, people don't realize they see people online who are doing these super long workouts. They're doing these super complicated things.
Mhm.
You don't need to be doing things that are all that complicated and make a big difference, right? There are times where I will do a workout that is four exercises, 3 reps of each, and I'll go. right? And put on a decent amount of, I mean, we can look at progress photos, like things have changed, right? In 6 months. Um, Even that makes a big difference in the aggregate, right? And so we're not talking about giving up, 3 hours a day. We're not talking about, expending so much energy that you have nothing to do for a
Yep.
day. We're not talking about fasting because um, I hear a lot of people talk about fasting. I believe it works for some people, but it doesn't work for people who live my life.
Yep.
Because I will fall over. Um, and so those kind of things can make a big difference. We should really, really be intentional about those.
Yep. 100%. Can you imagine going back to living the way you used to before doing this program now?
No. Um, I think the big difference truly is that I think about things that I didn't think about before, right?
Mm.
And before I order something, even on the days where I order it and I shouldn't, I at least say to myself, that's a bad decision, right? And I know that, right? And so the fact that I'm even thinking about it now makes a big difference, right? In terms of the fitness, I'd probably still be working out, right? Like I'd probably still have been doing what I've been doing or what I have been doing. I wouldn't be doing it as well, right? Like there are exercises that I probably wouldn't be doing that have been really good for me. There are muscle groups I wouldn't have been working on
Yep.
that I am now.
Yeah.
But in terms of nutrition, no, I'd be nowhere, right? And what I would tell someone is like, look, like um, I don't I never considered looks to be something that was all that important to me. I didn't hate the way I looked. I didn't like it, but I didn't hate it, right? Um, I understand, people start in different places and they think about their bodies differently. For me, it was then it came down to a situation of like, okay, I'm doing all this work on the fitness side. I'd like to see something, right? And um, people don't realize in terms of weight loss, and I didn't really lose a ton of weight in the program until the very end because that wasn't our goal.
Yeah.
Um, but people don't realize like with weight loss, you can work out as much as you want. If your nutrition sucks, it's not going to matter.
Yeah.
You might as well just not do it.
Yep.
Uh, and so taking the position of like, okay, like, and I don't remember what the numbers are, but it's something like 60% nutrition, 30% fitness, 10% sleep, something in that arena, right? Pretty close.
Yeah.
Um, or 70, 30, 70, 20, 10 or whatever, something like that. Um, taking that, taking that kind of mantra is like, okay, we have to like reframe what's important to us. It's not just about waking up to work out. It's about waking up to work out and then. So yeah, that was a big deal for me. So no, I can't imagine really going back.
Mm. What would you tell somebody? Because like I remember when you first signed up, you were kind of on the fence at first of like, oh, should I do this? Am I ready to do something like this? Like, what would you tell somebody who's kind of on the fence in the position that you were in 6 months ago?
Yeah, I mean, I was in the position of, Zach's program is amazing, but it isn't free. And is this kind of investment worth the money in myself? Um, and I really was on the fence because I'm cheap, and so I don't spend a lot of money. Um,
Yeah.
Certainly, I've never spent it on anything like this, right? What it came down to was I have a pretty significant. I find the learning to be virtuous, right? I like to learn.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot in this program. And Zach's program is built in a way that it is a teaching program and a coaching program at the same time, right? And so there's a learning element of it and there's a coaching part of it. Um, Being able to figure out what you don't know and working that into like what you already know is really important, right? And so um, what I would say is for what it costs, like you'll learn a lot, right? And um, the learning stay if you do it correctly stays with you forever, right? And so you can that's a relatively small cost to have that kind of knowledge and really be able to understand it with confidence and be able to work it into like your life, right?
Mhm.
And I mean, we've already talked about this, right? One of the first things Zach will do when you join this program is he'll ask about your life and he'll find things you can change in the context of your life that feel relatively small but make a big difference, right? For
Yep.
me, it was changing my Chipotle order.
Yep.
Um, and the you find that when you're 2 months into the program, 4 months into the program, you don't even need to ask anymore, right? Because you just know, right, based on, okay, how do I evaluate a nutrition label? How do I think about these kind of things? And so, I never asked Zach what I order at Sweet Green. I just looked at the menu and said, nah, it has basically nothing in it. I can eat as much of it as I want, right? People forget, by the way, celery, really good,
Yeah.
negative calorie.
Yep.
Consider the calories you burn whilst eating it.
Yep.
Um, things like that, right? Where you just you start understanding, okay, grilled better than fried, right? And obviously, like people know that, right? But like you don't understand how different they are, right? Um, I ate 8 ounces of turkey for lunch today. Um, on 2 slices of bread, it's a 300 calorie lunch. I think 300 something. It's a little bit, maybe a little more than that.
Yep.
Uh, I feel perfectly satiated
Yep.
5 hours later, right? And I could have had the I could have had at Chick-fil-A my full meal, my full slate, which was a 12 count nugget meal with a large fry, a large Diet Dr. Pepper, and a chicken sandwich, just a sandwich, no pickle. You can tell how much I used to order that.
Yep.
And I feel more satiated with the turkey than I did with the
Yep.
Chick-fil-A. It's not to say Chick-fil-A isn't great. And I still, have some elements of that order, right? Just changed around some of the things. We already talked about that a little bit. Um, but you learn about the effects of all that. And it's pretty dramatic, right? And
So
so,
huge. Yeah.
yeah.
And I love what you shared too of like, it doesn't have to be these massive changes. It's literally just small tweaks and small adjustments that will just like pay off so big.
Yeah, it reminds me of that scene from Moneyball where Billy Bean is in the is in the room with all of his scouts and he says, you're trying to replace Giambi and I'm telling you we can't do it, but we can replace him in the aggregate. It's the same kind of thing with what you're doing here, right? You're making small changes to make a big difference in the aggregate.
Yeah.
Um, and you know, think about it like this, right? If you had a calorie goal of 2,000, right, every day, and you ate at 1,800 by or 1,700 every day. So sorry, if your maintenance calories were 2,000, you ate at 1,700 every day.
Yeah.
The end of the week, you will have not eaten for a full day
Yeah.
if you eat that, right? Um, so 300 calories seems like a lot, relatively small to 2,000. Also, at least for men, most people's daily is a little bit higher than,
I,
maintenance is higher than 2,000, but the
yeah.
math is easy.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, if you eat 300 less calories every day and you do that every day for 6 weeks, like you will see dramatic effects. If you start working out, I do basically I work out 7 of every 8 on average. And
Okay.
I do 4 days and I take one rest day out of every, so it's really 8 out of every 9, whatever.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. You do that, right? You burn even more, right? The deficit's becoming bigger and bigger, and you got to look at it in terms of like the debt, and it's going up and up and up and up, and that's how you lose weight, right? I mean,
Yeah.
like
Exactly.
that's a small thing with a big, big decrease line over time, right?
Yeah.
In terms of weight loss. So, yeah,
Exactly. Well, I'm proud of you. Your explanations are great. You clearly learned a lot. This is great. Would you say it was worth the investment?
for sure. I think, I mean, Zach mentioned I was on the fence at the beginning. Um, we just renewed for, a month. Definitely plan to keep this going for the next few. And I think, at least, right? And I think, um, it's a hard thing for people to like jump head first into. But if you stick with it and you're able to find these small areas, um, you can pretty dramatically change some stuff. Everyone has a different goal. And one of the things about this program that's really good versus like if you downloaded an app on your phone is that Zach can develop a program for many different goals, right? If I came in 100 pounds heavier, the first 4 months of our program would have looked much different, right, in terms of what we were doing, is my guess.
Yeah.
Assuming like 100 pounds of fat heavier. Um, but the being able to customize that program to get to your goal, right? And for a while, my goal was, let's maintain weight relatively within a couple pounds and let's build a bunch of muscle. Um, and then, it quickly became, okay, let's shed off the last couple of pounds of fat that we see. Um, th those the being able to tailor a plan to those goals and have someone walk with you on that is a really valuable investment. So that's what I would tell someone.
That's awesome. What are your next fitness goals for yourself?
Oh, I've been thinking about that for the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely think, I want to, I think you're able to see a lot more growth in my arms than over the last 6, 8 months. I've always had the most annoyingly large legs of any person I've ever met in the
That's a
world,
soccer player for you.
soccer player body. Um, so now it's really about midsection, right? And like how can we develop that area, which is where um, when I finished playing soccer, you can look at photos of me, and I never had any real abdominal muscles, but um, that's where I definitely gained fat right after I started playing soccer or stopped playing soccer.
Yeah.
And so it's it's about now like how can I refine that area? But generally, like at this point, or once I get to that last kind of foray, right? It's about okay, how can we maintain and feel good every day, right?
Yeah.
I think you know Zach is a legit bodybuilder builder. Uh, I I respect him in many ways, and that's not my goal, right?
Yeah.
But I think after that, it's like how can I wake up every day and feel great, right? And that's kind of what I'm going for. So.
Wow. Good stuff. Well, we've covered a lot. Anything else that you want to share that's top of mind that you want to share with anyone watching this video?
Oh, that's a good question. I come from a journalism background, and so we would always ask that question. And anytime I've ever asked that, I never know. But I think what I would what I would say is it's hard to see how I think it's difficult for people to understand that other areas of your life get better when you feel better, right? When you feel better, you're happier, right? And when you're happier, you do better work. And when you do better work, you're making more friends, you're making, more money, right? And which makes your life better. What I mean? Like it's a circular flow model,
Yeah.
to use the economic term. And I think, or circular dependency is what I meant to use the computer science term. And I think that you start noticing these changes and like I walk differently than I used to, right? Like way better posture, right? And I think people don't give a lot of credence to that when they're first starting out. But it can make a real difference. It can also make a difference in the the world around you, right? Everyone in my family drinks a protein shake now.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah,
Wow.
everyone in my
Wow.
family now drinks a protein shake in the morning. We've all changed as a result of this.
Yeah.
And
And what
so
does your family think of it too?
yeah, it's a good question. And I was traveling a lot while I was doing this program, so I don't think they got to see it, right? The but I mean, I work out at a home gym, and I think I work out at a close family friend's house, and you know, they're the ones I'm waking up every morning by working out, and they know very well the discipline every day and the consistency. Um, the But I think I think that I think there's some surprise in like how quickly it can happen. That's part of it. I also think that um, you end up being able to teach people around you more, right? A lot of my friends are starting to think about it now because I'm 23, and a lot of my friends who are between 23 or 22 really and like 26, 27 are now like, okay, I'm not as active as I once was when I played tennis or when I played soccer or when I played basketball. It's the classic thing, right? Athletes they fall into many camps, but when they're competing, they can be eating virtually anything they want for so long, right? And then they stop competing and they just keep eating the same way they were.
Yeah.
You could a guy like Charles Barkley, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Hilarious guy, love him, right?
Yeah.
but certainly looks different now compared to when he was playing. Um, and so you end up bringing people along with you in the ride because you go out to eat and you say something to the effect of, yeah, I'm gonna go with the grilled chicken. Rather not, spend the fat on that, right? And I think people start realizing like, how dramatically different things can get
Hmm.
with these relatively small decisions, right? If you like fried chicken, you like grilled chicken too. Maybe not the same place, but you'll like grilled chicken, right? And by the way, there are things you can put on sorry, this is a long tangent, but there are things you can do with grilled chicken that will make it delicious. Um, because seasonings overwhelmingly, generally, don't cost calories.
Yeah.
There are seasonings that do, but most seasonings don't. So like there's this in Las Vegas, there's a steakhouse I really like called Golden Steer, and they sell online this stuff called Sergio's seasoning. It's like this salt, pepper combination, bunch of stuff in it.
Yeah.
You can put it on grilled chicken, changes the entire taste. Entire taste, no calories.
Yeah.
I
These
mean,
things are such a hack.
right. I mean,
So
and there's this Middle Eastern spice called za'atar that I think a lot of people don't know about.
yep.
Um, Changes the entire nature of the chicken.
Yeah.
Virtually no calories. Um, there are marinades that you can put on chicken actually that are pretty good for you. And part of the reason why is because they burn off a lot of it, right? And so, like there are certain marinades you can use that change the entire nature of the dish. Tastes really good, right? And so like there are things you can do to, I always hated the expression you have to eat to live, not live to eat. Because I thought first of all, I think that's, with all respect, bullshit. But I also think that it's not reasonable to say to someone, don't enjoy your life.
Yeah.
It's more reasonable to say you can enjoy your life. You just have to change a couple things to make it even better, right? And
Just be smart about it.
yeah, I mean there are so many like at the grocery store, there's deli meat, right? That there are like 10 different kinds of turkey. You'll be able to find one of the 10, right? I mean, unless you just hate turkey, in which case there's chicken. Yeah, I mean, like,
Something else. Yeah,
I
exactly.
mean,
And there's vegetarian options, and there's
yeah,
just
I mean,
there's
like,
so much out there.
yeah, and there are things you can do that are not bad for you. I mean, I've started making some dishes that are more healthy options.
Yep.
Using those kind of spices, things like that. Um, and again, it's not about perfection, right? Like, you don't need a zero fat meal.
Yep.
You just need something.
Yeah.
Um, and like,
So good. I love your creativity and just the way you think about it. So awesome. Well, we're approaching time here, so where can people contact you if they want to reach you?
yeah, I'm on Instagram. You can find me there. Actually, it's virtually all platforms, dbender PT. You can also hit my website if you want, davidwolfbender.com. Wolf is spelled with an E at the end. And or LinkedIn. I'm a big LinkedIn user. You can always find me on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And so but yeah, I mean, I'd be happy to talk to anyone if you're interested. I'm happy to talk you kind of through like what worked for me. And what this program can do, because I mean I think it's a big deal. And I think you know in the grand scheme it's a big it's a big leap, but it's one that can make you feel better at different points in the day. And I think there's not a lot of things that I think can change the way you feel, right? Like in a long-term way. But just think about, you wake up in the morning and you just feel good. Like that's a great feeling, right? And there's nothing that describes the feeling of when you finish a workout. And so just think through that, and I think people will come out on top.
Yeah. Yeah. Great stuff. Wow, so many gold nuggets in here, David. Thanks so much for sharing. This was absolute pleasure having you on. So thanks again for joining.
Yeah, anytime. Thanks so much, Zach.